Hello, I am finally getting around to documenting my Paris trip at the middle of August in 2022. I went when I was interning abroad in Germany over the summer, and this trip was a little bit different because I had to leave the apartment super early in the morning to catch a 6 a.m. flight. But Germany is pretty safe, so I don't think I was ever super worried about it. I ended up missing the bus because it was late, and so I took a taxi to the airport instead. I took Lufthansa for my trip to both Paris and Italy, and it's known to be a budget airline, so sometimes the flight schedule would be a little bit delayed. But since I had a lot of time and I was on vacation, it was also something that I thought that I could handle. The flight wasn't super long, and I was able to get to Paris relatively easily and check into my hostel. The hostel itself was pretty big and well established, which made it feel really safe, and it was in a nice area too, which I really liked. I had studied French in both high school and in college, so I think this trip was the one I looked forward to the most. And I've always liked French culture as well, so I found it to be a really romantic and beautiful place to visit. The very first day, I was a little bit tired, so I ended up walking around Montmartre for the day. This area is known to have a lot of small shops and also to be sort of a residential quarter that is a little bit more artsy than other places. It's a popular tourist spot because there's a church at the top of the hill, which is really, really pretty. And so I ended up exploring the area for a large part of the day. I used French to get around for most of my travels. It was a little bit difficult to get started because I was so nervous, but I think as time went on, it became more like a fun challenge, and I really liked being able to practice my French while I was there. The churches in France are different than the ones in Italy. The ones in Italy were built at the height of the Catholic Church, and so they tend to be very fancy and have a lot of stone and things like that, whereas the ones in France look a little bit more understated. But I thought it was really interesting to see the differences in architecture and also in the religious values that are displayed and how they construct their churches. This is the main square of Montmartre, and there's a lot of people walking around during the summertime because of holiday and things like that. The Wall of Love is a very popular tourist attraction where it just has the words I love you written in a lot of different languages, and that was also a fun pit stop. What I think I really liked about France or Paris when I visited was that there were a lot of families around doing small things just to enjoy life. It wasn't necessarily that they were taking a huge trip somewhere, but that they were just enjoying the city and all of the stuff that it had to offer. So I had originally booked the flight super early in the morning so that I would have most of the day to explore. But I found that when I got there, I was actually a little bit tired. So a lot of the day I just spent roaming the streets and not going to any particular tourist destination. Montmartre is also built on top of a hill, so there was quite a lot of walking and a lot of different exploration, which was really fun. Looking back on these videos, I think that Paris is super photogenic. The colors are captured really well. It was a sunny day, so I think that helped. But it's a very beautiful city, and I think that anybody who lives there is super lucky to be able to spend their time there every single day. Traveling in the summer is quite hectic because there's so many people, and it's also really, really warm in Europe, which I hadn't anticipated. So I often stepped away from the weather outside by going into churches because they had some type of insulation that made it cooler than the outside. But I think that being able to travel during peak tourism season is something that you should do at least once because that kind of experience of going on holiday with everyone else is also really fun. This is the Church of Montmartre that I mentioned earlier, which is a huge tourist attraction, and it's super beautiful architecture, and there's a lot to do in the surrounding areas as well. The architecture in Paris in general is something that I really liked, so I also took a lot of videos of that. Haven't been able to visit cities in Asia, Europe, and North America. I would say that a lot of cities have places where there's almost no people. So, for example, this church here that I stepped into when it was rather hot outside, there was nobody else there when I was there, which I found rather interesting. New York City would be like the complete opposite, where you feel like everywhere you go, there's a huge crowd of people. This church, I'm not actually sure where it is or what it's called. I'm pretty sure it was near Montmartre or at least the red light district, which I ended up visiting afterwards. Because it was the first day, I did feel a little bit tired, and so I just had a really quick lunch and didn't stop to like have a super big meal because I wanted to see as much of the city as possible. And also, sightseeing and people seeing are kind of synonymous in Paris, I feel, so that was also really fun, if a little bit different than what I'm used to from back home. So Montmartre is just north of the former red light district, which is called Pigalle. And so I ended up walking there afterwards. There's a lot of fun shops that I think are more for novelty purposes than actual sex work or for shopping these days, just because of how touristy the area has become. Moulin Rouge is something that I think a lot of couples and adults would enjoy seeing, but I didn't end up seeing a show while I was there. Um, the area itself, even though it used to be a red light district, it doesn't have that feel anymore. It's rather safe, and I think, again, it's just for the experience and the novelty and the historical value that it's still known as the red light district. After that, I just walked around a little bit more. There's a lot of lower rise buildings compared to North American cities, and I really like the way that the city looks in general. I think it's really charming, and also that it has a nice view for everyone. My hostel was built on like this riverbank, which was really nice. People were here either to eat food or to enjoy some of the free activities that the city provided during the summer. And I also ate dinner here for this first day, I believe, because it was just really nice and there were a lot of people around. I think going to Paris, I was actually more nervous than I was when I went to Germany or to Italy because I had studied the language for so long and I also had like these hopes for the city that I think made me worry what would happen if they didn't live up to my expectations. But when I got there, I realized I really had nothing to worry about. I think if I were to say one city or one country kind of encapsulated the lifestyle that I would like to have and like the personality that I would like to present, I think Parisian culture would be the most similar to it. And so I just really liked being there and being surrounded by the people and like getting to be a part of their lives for a little bit.
بس نطيحها نطيحها بعد
Yeah, so I had gotten back to the hostel area around 7 or 8 p.m., I think this is, and I really didn't attempt to go anywhere else for the rest of the day. I was pretty tired since I had been up since 3 a.m. that day, and it was a lot of traveling. And also, the area around the hostel had a lot of tourist attractions and activities, and so it was really fun to see. Um, I think one thing that's also interesting is that there are a lot of people who just do stuff alone in Paris. A lot of my videos, you'll see either couples or families, but also people who are alone just enjoying a meal by themselves or being in the park reading alone. And I think that that is something that seems scarier to do in the United States. I ended the day by reading or attempting to read a free book in the park next to the hostel. My French isn't that good that I could actually understand all of what the book was about, but I think I got enough that it was interesting to read, and it was nice to sort of pretend to be a French person for like an hour and stay in the park and be around all these other people. Yeah, so for the rest of the day, I just sort of wandered around the riverbank. It's interesting to see how people choose to spend their time. There's a lot of people just sitting there talking to each other over a bottle of wine. People don't tend to rush around as much, I think, even though cities in Europe are still known to be way more focused on work than, for example, towns and villages in rural France. It started to get dark around 10, 11 p.m., which was pretty late. And then after that, I just ended up going back to the hostel and getting ready to settle in for the night.